Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first ever episode of the Fantasy Edge. I am your host, Joe Marino. The show is brought to you by CrossCheck Media, CrossCheck Management. Welcome. Very excited to get started with this. We're at about the halfway point of the fantasy football season, so very excited to get this show going for all of you. A little bit about me. I've been playing fantasy football for about a decade now. Very passionate about it. I've been following it religiously for a very long time, so I'm very excited and energized to get this show going and helping you all win fantasy championships, because that's what it's all about. We don't just do this for fun. We're all about the glory, and I want to help you guys out. So that's what I'm passionate about. I like helping people, and I'm going to help all of you hopefully take some championships home in the coming months. So appreciate you all for tuning in to this first episode. So first and foremost, we're going to go over news from around the NFL for week 9. We're going into week 10. This is being recorded on November 4th. So this is Monday, a couple hours before the Monday Night Football game. So just keep that in mind. The Chiefs and Buccaneers game has not happened just yet. So we're going to go into a little bit of a rundown of the news from around the league. Also some injuries as well. So we'll kind of lump it all in together. We'll do this every week at the top of the show. First, we're going to go by quarterbacks here. So NFL Network's Ian Rappaport reporting that Dak Prescott's hamstring injury is worse than initially thought, and he's likely to miss multiple weeks. Cooper Rush will start at quarterback for Dallas in the meantime during Prescott's absence. Not very good here. Obviously, the Cowboys have had a very tough season so far. This is not going to be good for CeeDee Lamb. And Lamb is also injured too. So Dallas, this is not going to be good for them for fantasy. Obviously, there was some hope that with a little bit of an easier schedule going down the stretch here, similarly to last year, maybe there would be some magic between Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb again. But with this hamstring injury for Dak, that might not happen this year. So something to monitor. I'm a big fan of Jalen Tolbert. So with CeeDee Lamb's absence, we'll get more into that in a moment here. But he might be a guy to monitor on the waiver wire this week if he is still out there. Over at Tennessee, Titans head coach Brian Callahan saying the team is hopeful that Will Levis can return in week 10 against the Chargers. He's been battling a shoulder injury for the past couple of weeks. This is not very good for fantasy. Will Levis is a turnover machine. Very, very crazy type of quarterback here. Not good for Calvin Ridley. Ridley had bunch of targets the other couple weeks ago when Mason Rudolph was under center for the Titans. Had a decent week in week 9 as well. So we will see what happens here. I think that the Titans are probably in better shape fantasy wise with Mason Rudolph as their quarterback. So we will see what happens there. New York Giants head coach Brian Daboll says Daniel Jones will remain the team starter for week 10 against the Carolina Panthers. Jones had a pretty good outing fantasy-wise in week 9. He was top 5, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but doesn't look like Daniel Jones will be benched anytime soon. Over to Carolina, Dave Canales, their head coach, saying that the team has not decided if Bryce Young will be starting in week 10 just yet. Andy Dalton was in that car accident with his family, believe last week, maybe the week before, and he suffered a little bit of an injury. But hey, the Panthers just won. I would imagine they keep Bryce Young in the game coming up on Sunday. So obviously something to monitor there. And there was a coach firing today. The New Orleans Saints now have Darren Rizzi as their new interim head coach, as Dennis Allen has been relieved of his duties after losing 7 straight games after falling to the Carolina Panthers yesterday. And it seems like Derek Carr is going to be the quarterback going forward. Spencer Rattler will not be starting for them. I think we got enough of the Spencer Rattler experience while Derek Carr was out on the shelf with an injury. So Carr will most likely be the quarterback going forward for the Saints. And last bit of quarterback news out of Indianapolis, Colts head coach Shane Steichen saying that Joe Flacco will be the starting quarterback for the Colts going forward, despite the doubt after very disappointing outing in Sunday Night Football against the Minnesota Vikings. I think Flacco gives the Colts the best chance to win. So obviously, you can't blame Steichen for wanting to keep him in there. He obviously wants to keep his job. So I think Flacco gives him the best chance to win over Anthony Richardson. So we'll see what happens there. I don't think this is the last we've seen of Anthony Richardson, though. Over to the running backs. A little bit less news here, but back in Denver, Broncos head coach Sean Payton saying that rookie running back Audric Estime is expected to see an increased workload going forward. Uh, could be seeing a little bit of a three-headed monster here. Jaleel McLaughlin is there. He gets some carries, and also Javonte Williams, who has impressed a little bit over the last few weeks, showing more promise, but having Estime getting more carries, is that going to complicate things in the running back room there? I know I would be personally avoiding the Denver running backs there. But obviously something to monitor. I'm a big fan of Estime. I think he could be a very nice fantasy asset going forward. Bengals head coach Zach Taylor saying Zach Moss is out indefinitely with a neck injury. We saw basically the Chase Brown breakout game in week 9. He was a top 5 running back on the week. This is, I mean, obviously, I hope Zach Moss will be okay, but this only means good things for Chase Brown. And I think we could be looking at a league winner here. I'm sure we'll do a league winners episode in the coming weeks. I think Chase Brown likely is going to be on that list. Back in Tennessee, Brian Callahan saying he'd like to reduce Tony Pollard's workload because all these carries are wearing on him. Obviously, Tajay Spears, the backup young running back behind Pollard, he's been out for the last couple of weeks. Julius Chestnut has been kind of filling in that role, hasn't done a whole lot, but it seems like they want to reduce Pollard's workload, and he's done very well so far this season, and obviously would hate to, you know, fantasy playoffs are coming. You want Tony Pollard to be getting as much as he can. So something to monitor there. I think that he's likely going to continue to be a workhorse there. Not sure when Tajay Spears is going to be coming back, but obviously something to monitor. Keep an eye out for that. And the big news at running back here, Christian McCaffrey likely was the number 1 overall pick in most, if not all, of your fantasy drafts. He has had Achilles tendonitis going on for 10 plus weeks now. This was going back into preseason. Barring any setbacks, according to Adam Schefter, McCaffrey may be back week 10 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we'll see what happens. If you have Jordan Mason on your team, do not drop him. Do not. I currently have Achilles tendonitis, and I'm not playing in the NFL, and this thing is not going away for me anytime. So, hey, I'm no doctor, but this thing could flare up in an instant on him. Do not drop Jordan Mason. I would hold on to him because if McCaffrey goes down again and maybe misses multiple more weeks, Jordan Mason is going to be a very valuable asset to your fantasy team.
Joe,
as the
producer
playoffs
Todd here. I
approach.
just have a question for you on this Christian McCaffrey situation. With that injury that he has, is it true that maybe he's just thinking that he'll wait till he plays the Buffalo Bills in a few weeks because the Bills running defense is abysmal. And, Christian's probably thinking he can just, I want to rack up hundreds of yards. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Todd, I think Christian McCaffrey is very eager to get back on the field. So I think regardless, he's going to eat up my Buffalo Bills. Uh, as you get to know producer Todd here, uh, listeners and viewers out there, Todd is a diehard Baltimore Ravens fan. So he is not very fond of the Buffalo Bills. So you will
That's
come to
right.
know that as the weeks come on here. But yes, I'm sure McCaffrey will be eating up my Buffalo Bills.
Well,
And
we will see. We will see. Well, continue on. Continue on.
all right, Panthers head coach Dave Canales is optimistic that Jonathan Brooks will be returning Week 10 against the New York Giants. Brooks, the star rookie running back, he was a second round pick of the Panthers in this past draft. He will be making his NFL debut, if there are no setbacks, of course. Chuba Hubbard, the current starting running back for Carolina, he's done very well. So I'm sure they're not just going to give the keys to Jonathan Brooks right out the gate here. But if there's an injury to Chuba Hubbard, I think Brooks could potentially be a league winner here as the season goes on. Over to the wide receivers. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport reporting that Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons will undergo additional tests for his hip injury. Sounds like he is day to day. He might even be out there on the field this week for the Falcons, which is very good news. Make sure you monitor Ray McLeod. He had a touchdown uh, in this past week in week 9. And I'm sure 99% of the leagues out there, Darnell Mooney is rostered, but if for some reason he's not, make sure you pick him up. He has been phenomenal this year. And personally, he's helped my team win lots of games this year. So Darnell Mooney, he could, if London misses any time, Mooney is going to be a very valuable asset going forward. All right, welcome back to the Fantasy Edge. I am Joe Marino. We got producer Todd on the controls. We're going to get into the top performers from week 9. We'll start with the quarterbacks. Joe Burrow, 32 points on the week, 5 touchdown passes. One of the big duds of the week at wide receiver, Jamar Chase, no touchdowns, only like 11 fantasy points on the week. Uh, I know some Jamar Chase fantasy owners that were very, very disappointed, but Joe Burrow was a big winner on the week, quarterback number 1. Uh, Another big performer, also 32 points, Jalen Hurts. He is making it hurt for the rest of the NFL here. Uh, he's been phenomenal the last couple of weeks with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith back. Turns out when quarterbacks have their top weapons back, they do pretty well. So that's going to, I think, with Nico Collins coming back for the Houston Texans, that's going to be a big impact on CJ Stroud. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Probably one of the better games from week 9, Seattle and the LA Rams. Geno Smith had a great game, 28 points. He was slinging the ball to Jackson Smith and Chigbo with DK Metcalf out for the week. Metcalf expected to come back uh, after their bye week. So Geno, he has been obviously, if he is still out there on your waiver wires and if your quarterback's on a bye this week, I would pick up Geno Smith because he has been great and he'd be a great spot start option for you. Lamar Jackson, producer Todd's Baltimore Ravens coming in with 26 fantasy points. Uh, he's probably the favorite to be the MVP this year. I don't know. What do you think, Todd?
Absolutely is. I mean, are you kidding me? He already has two MVPs. I don't know anything about fantasy, Joe, and I know you're an expert at this, but how is it that he only has 26 points? He had a perfect game. I mean, was it just his lack of touchdowns? What, he had three touchdowns, I think, in the game?
Well, Todd, when here's a bit of advice for you. Derrick Henry, we're going to get into the running backs in a little bit, but when Derrick Henry runs that ball in for the touchdown, Lamar Jackson doesn't get any points. So the
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
number one, if
Well,
he threw the
listen,
ball to
you
Derrick Henry, it'd be a different story. But
I
that's just
gotcha.
works.
Listen, to the audience, you're a damn fool if you're not picking Lamar Jackson. He not only is going to win the MVP, he's going to win the Super Bowl MVP. You heard it here first on the Fantasy Edge with Joe Marino.
Last quarterback I want to highlight here, Daniel Jones. The guy's been getting tomatoes thrown at him all year, his whole career basically. But 26 fantasy points for him. Uh, hey, just like Geno Smith I was talking about, could Daniel Jones be a good spot start option for you? I know in my league, I have Jordan Love as my quarterback, and I'm thinking, hey, could Daniel Jones be a guy that can fill in for Jordan Love while he's on a bye week? I'm thinking about it. I don't know if I have the guts to do it, but hey, if you need the upside, Daniel Jones, he can run the ball, he can sling it, hopefully to Malik Neighbors. I have Malik Neighbors, so having that stack could be appealing. So those are top performing quarterbacks. Let's go over to the running backs here. A former New York Giant, Saquon Barkley. Todd, did you see the reverse hurdle from Barkley?
That I think will be my prediction is when they have the ESPY Awards, that's going to be the play of the year.
I could see that, honestly. It was very interesting. I've never seen anything like it before.
That's
Uh,
amazing. And hey, think about it. The New York Giants, what they have two wins or what, 2-6 or something like that? I mean, they got to be just putting their heads in a microwave and pressing defrost. I mean, how do you let that guy go? Unbelievable.
yeah, and then the guy that they bring in to replace him, basically Devin Singletary or Devin Dingleberry, as I like to call him, because not a big fan of Singletary from his time in Buffalo, but respect to him. The Giants, they dropped the ball here, letting Barkley go. He's been a perfect fit for the Philadelphia Eagles, and we're probably going to have a lessons learned episode coming up where we kind of look at the draft, the average draft position for uh, this past year. And I think Saquon Barkley is going to be the biggest one of, if not the biggest lessons that we need to look back on and learn. Like, how did we not figure this out that he was going to be arguably the number one running back on the year? Uh, so stay tuned for that. Devon Achan, if you were patient throughout the Tua injury, your patience is being rewarded. 32 points on the week, tied with Barkley for the top running back on the week. He has been a top three running back every week that Tua has been under center for the Miami Dolphins. He ate up the Buffalo Bills. Uh, he was great, absolutely great. If you have HN, you probably won your week, and I have a Devon HN too. I'm very pleased with him, to say the least. Alvin Kamara with Chris Olave out probably for the foreseeable future with yet another concussion. He's gonna be basically the only option in New Orleans. If you have Alvin Kamara, you're gonna be very happy going forward. Chase Brown, I talked about him earlier. 26 fantasy points. I think this is just the beginning for him. Chase Brown is a very talented running back. He is going to win people leagues. That is my prediction. Derrick Henry, another Baltimore Raven, 26 fantasy points. Just like I was talking about with Saquon Barkley, where we look back on the draft and we're like, what was going on here? Derrick Henry was in the second, third round of some fantasy drafts that I was in. I know I faded him as well. And I picked Rashad White in one of my leagues, and I'm like, geez, if I just would have picked Derrick Henry, I'd probably be undefeated. Um,
Yes, that's true. That's true. And he already has 1,000 yards rushing. He's going to hit 2,000 yards this year. I mean, think about that. Historically speaking, you have Derrick Henry will be rushing, as long as he stays healthy, will be rushing for 2,000 yards in the most prolific and Super Bowl worthy offense that's out there right now. Nobody can touch the Baltimore Ravens, especially Derrick Henry.
I love your enthusiasm on the Ravens, Todd. Love it. But yeah, Henry, he like fits like a glove on the Baltimore Ravens offense. Perfect. I remember last year watching Gus Edwards at running back for the Ravens. He was great for them. Just
Great. Gus the
yeah,
Bus was great. J.K. Dobbins was great, but J.K. got hurt. But remember, Keaton Mitchell is actually expected to be back this year in the next couple of weeks. This is a guy that had ripped up his knee, was an amazing running back last year before the injury. I have to ask you, Joe, is it too late to pick up a Keaton Mitchell once he gets back into the lineup?
well, Todd, I'm gonna say this. Keaton Mitchell is eligible to be put on your injured reserve spot. If you're in a league that has IR spots, I would consider it. If God forbid if Derrick Henry gets hurt, I think Keaton Mitchell could be a league winner. So if check your waivers, if Keaton Mitchell is out there, I would think about putting him on your IR spot. That's a great point to bring up, Todd, because Henry, this guy's a workhorse running back for this team, and Justice Hill is heavily involved too, and he's having a pretty decent year as a complimentary running back for the Ravens. Uh, but yes, Keaton Mitchell, I would definitely monitor him. It
Good
is
to
not
know.
pick him up. Yes, and we're not done talking about your Ravens just yet, Todd. Just be patient here. We're gonna get into the wide receivers. The Jackson Smith and Jigba breakout finally here. 37 fantasy points. I had a team in my league drop 200 plus points. He had Jackson Smith and Jigba on his team. I have JSN on one of my teams as well. And Garrett Wilson, 30 points in the Thursday night football game for the New York Jets. A couple phenomenal catches. He is getting peppered, absolutely peppered with targets. If you have Garrett Wilson, you're probably looking at a very solid shot at winning a championship this year. But back to Baltimore, Zay Flowers, 29 points. There's been a Baltimore Raven in the top five for each position so far, which is, I'm sure, very exciting for you. For
Yes, it is. It is. And Zay Zay's awesome because the thing about Zay Flowers, and if you do have him in your lineup, is that he has yet to reach max potential yet. I mean, this is a guy that every week continues to get better. He is an amazing player. But now with this guy, was it Deontay Johnson that they Ravens brought on? He will take and move the defense back over to Deontay. You'll see more of him in the play calling this coming Thursday against the Bengals. But you would then open up more opportunities for Zay Flowers. And I think that's what makes him such a magical player. He's really a one of a kind receiver. And as long as he stays healthy, you're going to see a lot more from him as the year progresses.
wrapping up the wide receivers here, Demarcus Robinson, 27 points. Did you see Puka Nakua getting ejected from
I'm shocked about this. I mean, this guy has always been just all football, but I have to say, and I'm not trying to play defense attorney here, but I have to think that something triggered him. And I mean, he let loose, definitely wasn't his best moment. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm not exactly quite sure why he threw the punch, but something clearly made him it forced him into that realm that made him do that and that type of action. It's very it doesn't seem
I,
very ordinary for him to actually have that type of experience. So yeah, very odd behavior at that moment, but it shouldn't be a long-term mark on him.
I agree. And he re-injured his knee in practice, I believe. So he looked like he was obviously playing hurt. I'm sure there was some frustration. Maybe something was said that triggered that explosion. But uh, again, monitor that knee injury. If that thing is lingering, who knows if he misses any more time. Cooper Kupp is going to be someone. If Nakua misses any more time, I think Cooper Kupp could win people leagues. He like look back at week 1 where Kupp had like 20 targets. You could be seeing some more of that. And number 5 receiver on the week, Cortland Sutton. A couple weeks ago, 0 points. He had like 1 target. I know my brother has Cortland Sutton on his fantasy team, and he was very disappointed. Uh, but Sutton, he looks like a guy you can start every week now, and if you have him, he might be a good wide receiver too for you. And tomorrow is the NFL trade deadline. Could Sutton be moved to a team like the San Francisco 49ers, maybe a wide receiver needy team? Sutton was in those trade rumors back when Brandon Ayuk might have been moved. So, but it didn't come to fruition, unfortunately for him. But Sutton is a guy who is in the upward trajectory. Tight ends, I just want to highlight Mike Gesicki because while T. Higgins is out with injury, Gesicki is going to the moon here. And Eric All, he's going to be out for the rest of the season with an injury. Gesicki basically has no competition in that tight end room right now. And he has been a very successful spot start, waiver wire pickup type player at the tight end position. So if you need a tight end and you got bye weeks coming up, Gesicki could be a guy, especially if T. Higgins is out. I expect him to probably be out again this week. Gesicki, I would consider picking him up. And also Josh Oliver for the Minnesota Vikings, 16 points on the week, had a touchdown. I think this is good for TJ Hawkinson because you're seeing guys like Oliver involved in the Minnesota Vikings offense. TJ Hawkinson, he is starting to get more involved. He just came back, made a season debut for the Vikings on Sunday Night Football against the Colts. I think Hawkinson is going to be a great tight end going down the stretch here for the Vikings.
This is a fabulous show, Joe, and the audience is going to love it even more as we progress through the rest of the season and beyond. There's so many great things that you're going to come up with on the Fantasy Edge, and this is the edge that every fantasy player needs. And you're not just covering football, you're going to be covering all sports. So there's so much to look forward to with this program, and we really hope the audience not just follows it, watches it, but they tell their friends all about it.
All right. I couldn't have said it any better myself. That sounds great. All right, so we are going to wrap it up here. We hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something new. Hopefully you won your week, and you're going to win the week coming up as well. So we will see you back next week. I am Joe Marino, producer Todd on the controls. Hope you enjoyed, and we will see you in the next one.